I was muted. I apologize for that. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's event. I am Candace Huber, owner of Chubby and Coos Mid-City Bookshop in New Orleans, and I welcome everyone to this event presented by Tour.com and in partnership with 6 different bookstores. So I'm really, really excited about all of the bookstores that are participating tonight. We have Old Firehouse Books in Colorado. We have Third House Books in Gainesville, Florida. We have Loyalty Bookstores in DC and Maryland. We have Brainlair Books in Indiana, and we have Copper Dog Books in Massachusetts. So all of us are here together. I am just the MC, but everyone from all of these bookstores is participating in tonight's event. So we're really happy to have everyone here. And of course, we are here to celebrate Master of Poisons out in paperback now. This is a book that came out in hardcover during the pandemic. And if you missed it, you really, really need to buy this book. It is so good. And I hope everyone buys it now that it's out in paperback. If you didn't buy it in hardcover, it's amazing. So tonight, we are honoring Andrea Hairston, who is a novelist, essayist, playwright, and the artistic director of Chrysalis Theater. She is the author of Redwood and Wildfire, winner of the 2011 Tiptree Award and the Carl Brandon Kindred Award, and Mindscape, shortlisted for the Philip K. Dick and Tiptree Awards, and the winner of the Carl Brandon Parallax Award. Tons of awards. In her spare time, she is the Louise Wolfe Kahn 1931 Professor of Theater and Afro-American Studies at Smith College. She has received the International Association of the Fantastic in the Arts Distinguished Scholarship Award for outstanding contributions to the criticism of the fantastic. She bites at night year-round, meeting bears and the occasional shooting star. And Andrea will be in conversation with Sheree Renée Thomas, who is an award-winning fiction writer, poet, and editor. Her work is inspired by myth and folklore, natural science, and Mississippi Delta conjure. 9 Bar Blues, Stories from an Ancient Future is her fiction debut. She is also the author of 2 multi-genre hybrid collections, Sleeping Under the Tree of Life, longlisted for the 2016 Otherwise Award, and honored with a Publishers Weekly starred review and Shotgun Lullabies. She edited the World Fantasy winning, groundbreaking Black speculative fiction anthologies Dark Matter, which is so good, and is the first to introduce W.E.B. Du Bois' science fiction short stories. Her work is widely anthologized and appears in the Big Book of Modern Fantasy, edited by Ann and Jeff Vandermeer. She is the associate editor of the historic Black arts literary journal Obsidian. She was recently honored as a 2020 World Fantasy Award finalist in the Special Award Professional category for contributions to the genre. And as I've just learned, she will be WizCon's guest of honor. So this is so exciting. Welcome, welcome to Sheree and Andrea. Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to listen, and I'm gonna take myself away and listen to both of you wonderful women speak.
All right. Wow. Thank you for that introduction.
Thank you so much. All right. That was wonderful. Hey, so it is always a joy to speak with Andrea D. Hairston or La Hairston.
Yes. Back at you.
Oh, man. It's been a long time, right?
22 years.
22 years.
Sheree and I met at Clarion West in 1999, and we were like, just so thrilled to be there and work together. And it was just a joy to connect, because I didn't know anything about Sheree until I got there. And she was at the beginning of Dark Matter, working on the first volume of short stories and discovering all of the wonderful fiction that there has been for a long time of Black speculative conjure stories. And she just put it together and made it happen. And I was like right there watching her do it. It was very exciting. And I was working on my first science fiction novel, Mindscape. And, the workshop was boot camp. And we they cracked the whip over us. We almost lost it many times, but we came out of there. And we've been connected ever since, doing science fiction and fantasy together ever since, reading each other's work, knowing all wonderful things about each other, and being with each other when things got hard. So, we've been through thick and thin. I understand that phrase right now. We've been through thick and thin. watching children grow up and, losing faith even for a moment, like, can we really do anything in science fiction and fantasy?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Oh, so we had to like support one another because, it has been a struggle, a good struggle, but definitely a struggle. But now here we still are 22 years later, still doing what the amazing work that we were reaching for back in '99, inspired by Octavia Butler, who was one of our teachers, and all the other teachers we had, like Nancy Kress and Greg Bear and Howard Waldrop, and help me out there.
Gordon Van Gelder.
Gordon Van Gelder and Gwyneth.
Yeah.
Gwyneth, what's Gwyneth's last name? Jones. And then all the people in our class. Yeah. So I really feel that was one of the big launch moments in my life. And I was in my 40s. So I was like a drama queen. And all these amazing folk helped turn me into a novelist.
Oh my gosh. So I was in my 20s and it felt like I'd always been a mom, but I had just had my youngest, who just turned 24 yesterday. But she was just a little wee thing then.
We called her a biscuit. She could fit in the basket of my bicycle.
That was her nickname then. She had a million nicknames, but Biscuit was one of her early ones. And I just remember just thinking, when you were unusual because you were doing a novel. Everyone else was writing short stories. For the most part, and you were submitting chapters of your novel in progress. And the thing that stood out for me immediately is just your amazing, amazing prose. Like the language was just wonderful. And I don't know if that came from all the years of being a playwright, a director, teaching theater, writing screenplays. I know that you were courted at one point by Dustin Hoffman when you were at Brown. Work with him on some projects. I mean, you've had James Baldwin walk into the theater and sit down
and watch a play of mine. That was like, whoa.
You've had Morgan Freeman and
right. He saw a play too. Yeah.
And Alice Childress. Can you talk a little bit about the origins, because I know Alice is particularly important to you.
Yes, well, I read Alice, in college. My professor at Smith was Len Berkman, and he did one of the first Black theater classes in the country, right? One of the first, and I took it with my best friend. I was going to be a physicist, but I took Black theater with my best friend, and she was going to be a lawyer, but we were sitting up in Black theater together, and we read Alice Childress in that course. And then after that, I was hooked. I mean, I had seen Alice as a young person, as a high school student. I saw one of her plays on the public television network, and it was directed by George Bass, and Abby Lincoln played the lead. I saw that play with my mother in 1968 or 69. Then I read her plays in college. Then I wrote to her when she put out a novel and told her what a wonderful person she was and analyzed her novel because, I'm an academic. I said, this is what is going on. This is what you're doing. And I love it. And you're amazing and brilliant. And she was like, nobody has understood what I've been doing. Who are you? Come and meet me. So I went to lunch with Alice Childress on Roosevelt Island. And then I was a professor at Smith. I invited her to Smith, and she came and worked on Gullah with the university here, and she talked with our students. She was amazing. I was her assistant director for this production. It was just incredible. And then, so I have all of her manuscripts, and we kept in touch. And so she was such an amazing figure. And she was an intersectional writer before we had the word, right? So from the 50s, she's an intersectional writer looking at gender, at class, at race, at nationality, all those things and how they work together. And she had at her center was looking at how women are treated and how what they need and who they can be and who they have not been allowed to be, and Black women as her, amazing portraits that she made. So I was really like, that's what I want to do. So, and that started in 1968, 69, when I still thought I was going to be a physicist, right? So I saw her play and I was like, yeah, and then when I decided to become a writer, it was definitely, yeah. And we talked about the poetry of the everyday person, the dry, long, Black person sitting on the porch telling a story. And that was one of Alice's, like gifts. She could just story tell, right? And then she could get a character to do that. So for me, like paying attention to how she got the idiom of people into her and the poetry of them into her dialogue and also her novels, because she wrote young adult novels as well as adult novels. And one of them, Here Ain't Nothing But a Sandwich becomes a film. So she ranged through every form, and she was self-taught. And so for her, the language of the people taught her how to be a poet of the theater, how to be true to the spirit that's in the words, that words can conjure a whole world. And so, I think I get a lot of my appreciation for the poetry of people in interaction that I want to put on the page from someone like Alice or someone like Anna Devere Smith, another great playwright who went around and collected people's words and then performed all of these different voices. So that's one of the things that I try to do in all of my novels. Mindscape has like 6 point of view characters, yes. And each character has a voice. And I get that from the theater, where you really, as a playwright, you don't write in a style. I mean, you have a style, but everybody has to have a voice within that style. So for me, that's, poets and playwrights are very close in terms of the economy of language, because you only have people for a couple hours and they'll get antsy. So every moment you got to like make sure that it's alive dramatically and poetically, so that the audience can call up the whole world. Because novelists get to write the whole world, but the playwrights have to do the poetic thing of calling it up with simple objects and language often, unless you have like, the $1 million budget. But if you don't, or if you're Shakespeare, you bring an orange on stage and you must be in Spain. I mean, that's a classic example. Because, you're not in London because they don't have an orange tree there, right? So you have to find the object, the prop that is filled with, the world that you want to conjure for your audience, and they will go there with you. So that's what I work on in my prose.
So I love how you brought all these seeds of your journey with you in terms of your development. So you're touched by the work of Alice Childress. You're able to like give her such an amazing review on a level of detail and like a close reading that she hadn't really been used to getting.
No.
Start as this great meeting, and then you go on. And to not only do that, she did that for you, but you did that for other people, for Pearl Clegg as well, being one of the first people. And I just think it's important to talk about you as the queen of drama, right? How you bring your full self to the page. You talked about the intersectionality. We're going to talk about how the queering the future with this amazing novel, how you have all these non-binary characters in a natural way that we don't usually get to see. This is like a great time for readers to see all of this broad range of humanity on the page in our genre, which is pretty amazing. But you've also used screenwriting as kind of an outline for writing novels. Can you talk about how you do that and how you approach that for Master of Poisons?
Well, playwriting and screenwriting are actually my base forms, right? I think in terms of plays or screenplays. So novel writing sits on top of that. So what I have to do, so a screenplay is a way of thinking for me, right? I can think a story through with a screenplay. So I hate outlines. I don't know if you like outlines. I hate outlines. People who can sit down and do outlines, my hat is off to you. I can't do an outline, but I can do a screenplay. So I wrote this huge novel called Exploding in Slow Motion. It was, I don't know, 140,000 words or something. And I got to the end of it, and a good friend of mine, Bill Oram, you know him, he read the whole mess and said, wow, Andrea, there's a lot of interesting stuff in there, but what's the story? What's going on? What is it? You know, like great prose, you know, but what's going on? So what I did was I said, okay, Andrea, write the screenplay. You know, write the screenplay for the, you know, the story that you want to tell.
Because the screenplay is images and dialogue. It's the
images and dialogue and plot.
And plot.
Images, dialogue, and plot. You know, so it's like an outline. I realized, but it's a creative form. So I wrote a screenplay for Redwood and Wildfire, and I just said, oh, okay, this is a story. And then I took that screenplay and used it as the outline for the novel, right? And I, you know, in the novel, like I wrote that novel like fast. It was like woo, 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 because I already had the whole story, all the stuff, and I turned it into prose. So for Master of Poisons, I had, instead of doing Master of Poisons is much more epic than Redwood and Wildfire. It would be like, I don't know, 10 screenplays. So, you know,
you have all of these worlds. We're going to talk about the geography of the world,
right? But what I did is I used, when I get stuck, I go, okay, what would be the screenplay for this series of events? And then I'm released. You know, it's like oh yeah, you know. So then I can outline. It's like a sneaky outline. So because it's a creative form, and I can think in it. Or, you know, like just do the dialogue and the images, because that, you know, tell the whole. In fact, I do what is called, you've done this, you've taken my screenwriting class. Yeah. Do the silent movie of this moment. If you were going to tell this whole moment without any dialogue, which is a really good thing for a novelist to figure out, shoot the movie. And so I sit down and write the shots. And then that helps me figure out, like, what is going on? Because you have to know what you're doing. And sometimes I'm just, my writer self is just exuberant, and here's all this stuff. And then I need some help to shape it.
To guide it through it.
To guide it, yeah, right. And so that, and I think what is really good, because the poet is just like, is that the word you mean? And the poet is exacting, oh my Lord, is that really the word you mean? But that doesn't help you tell the whole story. So the poet is just arguing with me about various words and maybe that structure. And do you really need a comma there? So I don't need the poet to come in right away. The poet can come in a little later. And then help me out. But the screenwriter can be at the beginning. Mm-hmm. The screenwriters don't care about poetry. I mean, they care about the poetry of the plot or the juxtaposition of images, but not about the word. The word is less important.
It's about the people, the characters.
The people, the characters, and what they're doing. So, you know, so it's really great to have, like, I can fall onto the screenwriter or the playwright and get that. And then the poet can come in and make it all pretty. Right, like
you made it pretty for us. So I just want to flash for our audience out there, just in case you haven't gotten your original hard copy and you want to get the trade paperback. I have my beautiful hard copy here, Master of Poisons. Yay. And you have how you help us enter this world. As you began it with a very, very theater thing. You have a list of our major characters.
Right. Right.
All divided upon the worlds, right? So we're with our Arkissian Empire. We're with the Green Elders and Sprites. We're in the Holy City, you know. We're at sea with the pirates, you know what I mean? And then we're with all the wild things, right?
Yes.
I was wondering if you could begin this evening by giving us a little bit of a reading, just so we can hear some of the just a bit from some of the main two characters that you created for this story. It's a story of a future, and they're trying to map out the future, but they've got very different perspectives of what that should look like and how it should be done. Yeah. One character, our wizard, thinks he knows exactly what needs to be done, and he's willing to sacrifice almost everything to do it, even his own, right?
Yeah.
And there is a young sprite who's unsure of everything and is losing her space in the world and trying to claim that space for herself and trying to find out where she belongs and how she can bring her unique gifts into this world. It's just an amazing story, intergenerational, takes us through all these realms. We're here with the animals as well. You treat them with the kind of respect that you would treat any character. We get all these different perspectives. And I had my favorite parts. And when I was thinking, okay, what do I want? I sent you this long list.
Yes, you did. I have it here. I'm like, whoa, girl. So, but I have.
You want to read from us? Read for us.
Well, you said Jola,
yes.
Page 38, I think it was.
I want you to start chapter 5.
Storm. Okay.
Start with page 38, just so we can get Jola's point of view, and then we'll go to young Awa.
Okay. Storm. The first week of council was as unreasonable and frustrating as fighting with Nuar and Samina. In an afternoon break, Jola escaped to a south wall of the Emperor's citadel, a maze of domes, columns, gates, and towers. He was a solitary figure in an Anawanama travel cloak and mesh veil. The third void storm in a week roared through the capital. Now, this wasn't a regular wall of sand blowing in from distant dunes and blotting out the sky. Rogue twisters popped up here and there from nowhere, from static and shimmer. People barricading windows were too late. Whirligigs snaked through the streets, searing cheeks, burning lungs, and desiccating ancient cathedral trees. The library's onion domes were engulfed in sooty sparks. Stone turrets swayed in a shower of static. Wooden shops and hovels rattled. Thatch roofs lifted up and spun away. Jola took perverse pleasure in this spectacle. The good citizens were primed for change. Tonight's council session would be better. Hope was on the other side of a lethal storm. An elephant staggered down a Riverstone alley toward the citadel's iron gates. Harassed by an angry mob, the elephant flapped her ears and trumpeted. A squall of soot and sparks chased her and had good citizens charging for cover. Jola chuckled at false bravado. The squall wound itself tight behind the elephant's tail, twisting and sparking with a fury, and then disappeared. Nobody ventured forth to take up the chase. Who could say where else a poison whirlwind might dance? Twisters vanished and the air cleared. Blue-green waters sparkled beyond the docks. Jola opened his cloak. Rogue elephants and demon storms fueled his resolve. A sea breeze would cool his temper. The elephant stomped distress, calling to family, pleading for rescue. No elephant replied, just horses and men hollering in the distance. Maybe she was the last of her clan to survive. A massive beast roaming behind the Emperor's citadel without a handler was strange. How had she gotten to the back alley? No guards raised an alarm. They were busy patrolling capital streets, quashing unrest. Jola was right to leave Samina and the children behind. Council always faced riots these days. His heart warmed to see the wild elephant, a fellow Northlander, a rebel defying the odds, making her own way. What would a simple bolt or spear do against an angry elephant, or thousands of anxious citizens for that matter? The people needed vision, a map to tomorrow. Jola was the empire's greatest map maker. He stroked the spell scrolls in his bag, years of hard work. Samina's wisdom was there too. She would tell him to be careful, patient this evening at council. He could do that. Soon was better than never. The elephant shook off a cloud of dust and sparks. She wandered across the alley, her trunk writhing in front of her. The freak storms were like sandpaper. Blisters on her back glistened with blood. No longer dodging a mob or a whirlwind, she poked a jagged, broken tusk at an empty grain bin and stumbled through a dry water trough. Have you come to council with a petition from the animal people? Jola sat down at the edge of the wrought iron gates. No? Well, I'll tell them for you. disaster is upon us. His feet dangled between the bars, mist condensed on coppery skin, and a sea breeze wafted through dense black hair. The weather shifted so quickly. As the sun disappeared into the salty sea, his eyes flickered in dwindling light. His mustache drooped and itched his lower lip. He was clean shaven except for the mustache, a northern custom that made him look savage, or worse, like a green elder to folks in Archie City. Samina urged him to grow a beard, do any masquerade that might gain access to people's right minds. Jola refused. An itchy beard would aggravate him and impress nobody. Samina had a head for gazing at stars, navigating the seas, or reading books, not face-to-face politicking. After hearing petitions, council would curse and argue all night. In the morning, Emperor Azizi would do nothing, and more people, animals, and grasslands would die unless Jola forced council to admit truth. No hope without change, no change without sacrifice. The elephant bellowed, tears darkening the wrinkled skin around her eyes. I know. He'd rather be home too, at the north edge of the Idao mountain range with Samina, waiting for the moon to rise over the salty sea, making love in the sand. The elephant caught Jola's scent and halted below him. She lifted her trunk, exploring his secrets. He smelled of crossroads conjure and root work, of sweet water and mint tea, of ink and musty parchment. He put his hands through the bars. The elephant got a whiff of mango and cathedral nuts and moved in close. Jola emptied the food from his bag for her. Her thin ears radiated heat as she gobbled the scant food offering. Mangoes in the mountain groves were still plentiful. After the last sweet morsel, she wrapped her trunk around his hand, marking him with her scent and gathering in his. The two finger bones at the end of her hairy nostrils tickled, a tale for Tessa and Ball. His daughters loved elephants. Hoya! Emperor guards, not from his loyal escort, appeared at Jola's shoulder. Burly, hairy fellows with weapons ready. Southern barbarians? Hold! Jola gripped their spears before they did anything foolish. The elephant trumpeted. Run! Jola spoke Anawanama, his mother's tongue. The guards wouldn't know a northern language, but the elephant might. Leave the city while you have the chance. The elephant raised her trunk, beckoning him to join her. No, I must stay. A scrappy guard pulled his spear arm free and said, Did a caravan lose this beast? Jola blocked him. The elephant lumbered down a path to the foothills of Mount Idao. She must smell fruit trees and mountain springs. The passageway was wide enough for her, and mountain gates would open for an escape. Jola smiled at good decisions. The scrappy guards grimaced. Someone has lost a fortune. That's a wild one, Jola said. There aren't any wild elephants left. The guard smirked at Jola. Poison desert is chasing the last few into the city, Jola declared. A pity. Why waste pity on lumbering beasts? Nobody wanted to hear about elephants and bees dying off. Samina and Nuar were right about this. Our children starve. The second guard hushed his comrade with a curse. A guard shouldn't argue with a master, even a clean-shaven Northlander like Jola. I love my children too, Jola said, defensive. Everyone assumed Northlanders sold or abandoned their daughters and sons without a thought. The second guard managed a smile. Petitioners are waiting. Yes. Jola watched the elephant disappear. I make a map to tomorrow for all. Forest-dwelling Anawanama, desert rogue Zamanzi, and other so-called savages north of Archie City had grown restless under the Empire's fist. Jola couldn't say or think savage without wanting to argue with the word, take it back, turn it around. Why should proud people slave and starve to feed greedy empire's citizens? Southern thief lords around the Golden Gulf also chafed against taxes, desert winds, and the rule of law. They preferred to let the best blades claim the most riches. Samina once saw Jola as the architect of peace, a hero who turned northern tribes and southern thief lords into loyal subjects of Emperor Azizi. She fell in love with a master of the impossible. Everybody was ready for peace, though, back then. 20 years gone by, and Jola's peace had frayed with each day, each dry riverbed and bleak harvest. Southern barbarians grew bolder, raiding empire caravans and tree oil strongholds. Northern tribes did the same. And now there was a plague of void storms, nothing to lose with death coming from every direction. Samina was right to worry. Joel refused to scratch his hind parts, tug his mustache, and wait for someone else to act. We save each other, he declared. Is that so? The scrappy guard drew Joel into a dark archway and blindfolded him. Jackals roam these corridors, and hyenas. They chew traitors' hearts and suck spy bones. What a way to die, the other guard groaned. We know the safe route. Safe? Jola muttered. They hurried through a maze of passageways, back to the council chamber, back to unsettling truth. They could all, master, thief lord, guard, emperor, and elephant, lose everything.
Thank you so much. Thank you. In that wonderful short scene, Storm, you introduced for us tonight, Jola, which is a major, major character. Can you talk a little bit? Not just so much. There's one thing I was telling someone else that you're infinitely quotable. The map of tomorrow, the people need vision, a map to tomorrow, all these wonderful things. How Jola was able to turn around a very, very tense field moment and get allies to guide him on, shepherd him on to safety, because they all need the same thing. They need the deserts not to be poisoned.
Right,
they need the elephants to not be the last ones in the wild. They all love their children. They all love their families. Everyone has something to lose. This book is so timely in so many ways. It's environmental. It's looking at the climate change, or in an alternate place, of course. In so many different biospheres or what have you. It's looking at spiritual and philosophical questions that continue to plague us, and we continue to find the answers to. Just so much. Can you talk a little bit about how you came upon this particular story? Where did it come from?
Well, when I wrote Mindscape, I think I was dealing with the same questions. So I think I've been trying to write this book forever, right? So, but the particular version of this story, I was reading about, Carl Engel Laird at Tor.com asked me for a novella. So this was my attempt at a novella. I failed miserably, but I said to Carl, I'll try. And
it's
so
like 100 novellas.
I said, I don't do short forms. But I said, I'll try. So I was reading about the Mississippi Delta disappearing, about the wetlands disappearing. I had an envelope with a dead bee on it where they were asking me for money to save the bees. I had all this stuff, and I'm like, why don't we stop? And the climate is just talking to us. It's saying, look, this is timely. Let's, and we're not stopping. And so the very first line of the book came, we do anything, because we deny what's going on and we hold on to our gods, our concepts, or whatever. And that's all of us, not, I'm not singling out anybody. Mm-hmm. So I was like, wow, okay, I'm going to make that a novella. The first lines of the book are the first lines that I wrote, about denial. And I kind of actually started in the middle of the book because I was doing a novella. So I thought I should get to the action and, because it was only going to be 40,000 words. So I had to start real quick, but it didn't make any sense. because I really wanted to deal with that question, like, what can we as different people, how can we be different together and solve this problem? So if I'm going to write a book about how can we be different together, I need the sweep of our differences. And I need to challenge myself, like I can't just have people who all get on, getting on and solving the problem. I can't have the single hero, because I think I talk about.
Why can't you have the single hero? That's such a traditional Western.
I can't do that. I can't do the single hero. Oh my God, I can't do that. Well, one, it's like one man, and it's just this absolutely, it's an illusion. There is no such thing as one man. So to me, I'm like Leopold Senghor. I dance with the other, therefore I am. Not I think, therefore I am. But I dance with the other, or the wisdom of so many indigenous people that as a community we make one another. So I mean, I'm quoting Senghor, but I could have quoted a whole bunch of people. And so this whole notion that of the individual, is to me, an illusion. Like, where does actually, like, I breathe the same air at some point that you're breathing right now. It swirls all around the planet. I have, like, something from Nelson Mandela, some, molecule from Nelson Mandela is in my arm, right? And that is a thrill to think about that. I am here, speaking English, which is a language that how many people invented? How many, so I can't really claim all the poetry I wrote, because all these people have been adding to this language forever and ever and ever. So, the idea that the poet, is all alone, like making up brilliance, I don't think so. So for me, I play West African traditional music. I have a balafon. I play, I don't really play tama drum, but I have tama drums. I have djembes, I have drums. And the thing about drumming is a good friend of mine, Tony Vaco, who is a white American drummer, he went to West Africa and he met all these amazing drummers, and they asked him, Tony, why you play alone? Because he was a drummer. He had like a hi-hat and all these different drums and pedals and stuff. And he could do the whole thing, like playing alone. And they were like, why you play alone? Right. And so Tony tells this story and he's like, wow, that's a really good question. Why do I play alone? So, I mean, I don't think Tony plays his drum set that much. I mean, he does, but now he plays everything with a group of people. I mean, and he plays balafon. And so I met many of these musicians who are like these griot master musicians, but they play with everybody, right? And their genius is that once in the group, and the group lays down a rhythm and is talking to each other, they like take their tama drums. Masamba Joe takes his tama drum and just accents and comments on, and he has like insights based on what they're doing. So the genius moment that we would attribute to Masamba comes because all of us are sitting there like banging out whatever we're banging out. And then Masamba goes, blah, 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 blah. And then somebody else goes, blah, 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 and then we have a whole conversation going, and then everybody lifts up. And this to me is also the genius of theater. So you have the so-called star, but really, like, if I'm not with everybody, then my star does not shine.
So it's like the work of Maurice Condé and others who tell the story in the round, the whole village, the whole community is telling us. The whole
community and all the viewpoints. So back to Alice Childress or Anna Devere Smith, these amazing writers who influenced me. Anna Devere Smith is perhaps a single performer, and she portrays an enormous amount of people who all have a different view of the story. Or someone like John Sayles or Daughters of the Dust. These were really profound influences on me artistically in the 80s, right? I'm sitting in a little teeny weeny theater with my friends and we're watching Daughters of the Dust, gasping, and then we turn around and come back and watch it again. One, we haven't seen like Black women on screen like this ever, right? So we had to come back and see that. But then it was about this whole group of women and men making this world.
And
and
children.
children and old people and everything. I mean, it was amazing. So, and the land itself was part of the story. Um, so that is one of those films like Alice Childress that I was like, whoa, okay. So, there was no hero in that story. And there are amazing characters. All of them are amazing characters, but it's their interaction that allows each character to really grow. So, or John Sayles. I think I showed you were like an artist in residence or something. You were here for something, and we watched Mate One, which is a story of West Virginia, and John Sayles just gathered all these people. He had great actors like James Earl Jones, just like amazing actors, to just create the people, and it's the people who resist the horrible reality that somebody else wants to impose on them, right? And it's together that they have the strength and the clarity and the genius. Even though there's like a pivotal character, Chris Cooper, he's like one of John Sayles' pivotal characters, and I think there's a pivotal character in Daughters of the Dust. So, but it's not that character is pivotal in that they might have a broad view and they might interact with a whole range of people. So they're an entryway into the story, but they're not the quote hero. They're just like, oh my God, we will follow them. Because, the pregnant, I can't think of what the character's name is, the woman who is pregnant and the unborn child in Daughters of the Dust, they are pivotal because everyone is sort of, swirling around that story. And how will we deal with that? But everybody's story is important.
You show that so much in this novel, and you also just, show us there's a different way to tell stories, right? Like I feel like if you're not feeling good, things you need to be immersed in another world. Master of Poisons is a great novel to pull up, because you are just you're dropped into these very fully realized, very vividly written, lush places, and you feel like I felt the heat. I smell cinnamon and nutmeg. I feel like the dust from the road and the alleys are there. Everything is very real for us when you're reading it. But then you have these characters, and they're not fully villains, and they're not fully heroes, and they're not perfect and flawless. And they're not unsavable. They're not people that we have to dismiss. And you can recognize all these different elements of humanity in each of these different characters. You can see their different agendas, and you can see, their blind sides, right?
Yes.
But they're all trying to create this map of the future together. Could you introduce us to another pivotal character, Awa? That little short passage.
Now,
starting on page 21.
I have to get my book up to page 21 because it was on the other page. So I will do that.
This is when we get a bit of the Green Elders. So she comes from a completely different place than our Northlander, Jola.
Yes. Okay, wait, just one second. Yes. Okay. So, so now is this the beginning of that chapter?
You're going to do the second full paragraph, if you don't mind.
Okay, what's the, because of course the page 20, when Awa was 12, that?
Yeah, page 21.
Okay.
And it starts with the first time she wandered to Smokeland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me find that. There it is. Okay. The first time Awa wandered to Smokeland was in the company of bees. It was the day before her 12th birthday. She and oldest brother Kanu had opened an elephant corral left behind by thief lord raiders and let the beasts run free. Angry villagers who wanted to sell the elephants chased after them, but the elephants escaped. Father was outraged. Awa ran away from him and mother, arguing over true love and some other man's child. Awa followed friend honeybees as they flew sideways into the woods. Which woods, she could never say. The forest surrounding Father's lands was ancient cathedral trees whispering to one another up in the clouds. Bronze-colored bark was dappled with purple moss. Feathery needle leaves started out red and turned green with age. Cathedral roots were as thick as awa and oozed an oily scent that made her dizzy. In her childish memory, Smokeland terrain got tangled with the everyday. This first time, Awa was disappointed not to find a border of fiends, exploding jellyfish, and void smoke. She landed in a field of wildfire flowers by a cathedral tree grove. She moved at the speed of thought, spinning endlessly around a drop of water as it slid down a leaf. In a blink, she raced from riverbank to valley to rocky peak. A beehive the size of an elephant rested inside a tree trunk cavern. Swarms of workers buzzed about, stingers hot with venom. Dancing distress, they smelled like ripe bananas. Awa saw no reason for alarm. Trees and bushes were heavy with flowers. The ground was a mosaic of petals. Deep-throated blossoms bulged with fragrant nectar. Inside the hive, the queen pushed an egg from her abdomen into a cell every minute. Workers spit nectar into the queen's mouth. 1,000 nurses buzzed over a developing brood, and drones were fat and frisky. Bee paradise. Sentinel bees clustered around Awa's mouth. She was afraid they might sting her. Was she the danger? They spit honey and venom on her tongue, a bittersweet concoction. Night fell like a dark curtain. A cold scar moon hung overhead, a desperate lantern in deep dark. Sentinels wagged their butts and buzzed away from the giant hive. Awa flew among 1,000 bees toward Smokeland's border, where flowers dissolved and cathedral trees crumbled into poison sand. The slash of moon dripped blood. Confused bees flew into the ground. They ate their own wings and stung rocks. Faceted eyes clouded over and sparking hearts burned out. 1,000 wings flew ahead of Awa and turned to smoke. She choked. Confronted with the famed horror of the border realm, Awa tried to slow down, tried to turn back for bee paradise, but she no longer had the speed of thought. Her mind was sluggish terror and then blank as void smoke enveloped her. A taste of the sentinels lingered in her mouth. A stinger caught in a tooth pricked her tongue. Venom flowed up her heart, to her heart, and she swooned. Father and other good Empire citizens claimed there was no realm of imagination, no true land of visions and spirits. Smokeland was sleepwalking sickness, drunken dreams, or green elder nonsense. That explained tattoos, burnt hair, and the treasures folk brought back from their adventures. Smokewalkers knowing what they shouldn't or couldn't was another matter. Father couldn't explain that away. He just insisted Mother's exotic herbs and concoctions were family secrets. Southern thief lords sold or burned any woman who knew too much. Northern savages sliced smokewalkers from navel to chin to expel demons. Priests and witch doctors poisoned their breath bodies and stole spirit blood to power gate spells or do other conjure. This was a living death. Good Empire citizens locked up smokewalkers to train for priesthood if they were men, or drain as transgressors if they were women. And Avazen, what Anawanama Northlanders called someone who was neither man nor woman, had to declare for one or another horrible fate, living as a man or dying as a woman. So, Awa returned from her first Smokeland trip to Mother's garden and let the Smokeland knowledge taste sweet on her tongue, then swallowed it quickly, unspoken. That made her muscles lumpy and her joints wobbly. She snorted wisps of border void and felt dizzy. Father was still yelling at mother about an unruly daughter who'd end up like witchwoman Carrie, wandering a cold mountain, bloody and bitter, childless and without love. Mother distracted him with a sack of jewels and coins, while Awa struggled back to her everyday self. The scar moon was low and the sun about to rise over mother's garden. Silver-leafed herbs brooded around the well and spice bushes scented the air. Awa focused on cinnamony aromas. The everyday was as compelling as Smokeland. Mother must have carried Awa's breath body back from the forest. Forget the elephants, Mother pleaded with Father. Her willful hair was braided down in thick plaits. Her brown cheeks sagged. This unruly child has brought in a treasure. Counting the money, Father didn't notice the wild pup licking Awa's face. Mother chased him off before Father put a bolt in his furry hide. Dogs harassed the goats who had no fat to worry away. Selling Awa has saved your farm, Mother said. Father looked up from his money bag at the tumble-down corn crumbling in the fields. Fruit trees were covered in a fuzzy scale. Goats bleated at kids, sucking their dried teats. Father had stolen all the milk. We'll see if the farm can be saved, he said. His eyes were flicks of flame, his trim beard patchy. We'll see. Awa's face was flame hot, her hands cold. They were selling her on her birthday, like a savage girl nobody wanted to feed anymore.
Wow. Wow, it's wonderful. Ah, selling that poor child.
Yes, yes.
So many different kinds of family, right?
Yes.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. And that in that section, you also introduced the non-binary characters of the pronouns.
Oh, right. Vasins and V, right.
Yeah. How did you approach that with the novel?
Well, the characters came to me and they were, so what I do is like characters come to me and they tell me who they are. So I write it down. So they came to me. And I have, of course, read many different cultural frames in which gender is distributed differently. So there are many, many peoples who have multiple genders, 5, 6 genders. And European notions of gender get, sort of imposed on those other kinds of gender realities. And so I realized this is not a European fantasy. So I'm like, well, I'm not stuck in that. I felt like at first I was thinking, of a word that seemed to still be gender bound. It was like a word like he, she, or something, but that still sets up the binary. So I abandoned that word and came up with vase and V. I'm fluent in a couple of languages, and I know other languages and other even European languages do different things with gender. And Yoruba has O-U-N, which I use in my recent book. And it's both he and it's for all genders. It means person, the person, they, so they have that word. And it doesn't necessarily inflect. Someone criticized me for not inflecting it, not having it have an accusative or, she, her. But every language doesn't have accusative, or some languages that have accusative. It's the same in German. The word for she is sie, but that's also the word for you, and also the word for they. And in the if you say I see her, in German ich sehe sie. So you don't have a different word for the nominative or the accusative. So since I knew all of that, I was like, okay, in my culture, it's this, and it doesn't inflect, and it just has a possessive. These, that's the one inflection I'll do. Because many languages, English, we get rid of a whole lot of stuff. If you look at German and go to English, they have many more forms for their verbs. And we just said, no, unless it's go or to be, we're just, they walk, she walks, we have an S there, but, we walk, you walk, and German has something different for each one of those. I'm like, hard to learn. So language is different, and we get a notion that our language is language. So I wanted to work with that, and also our sense of gender is gender. And I wanted to interrupt that. Like, why am I making up a new world where our sense of gender is gender? I'm like, R as in dominant, Euro-influenced American culture. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do something else. And I
do all these other things in here, and you give all this great information, this background, because the other thing that you do something else on is that you seamlessly blend the fantasy elements of your work with the science fiction, which is not always an easy thing to accomplish. And you also cover these big, big topics, without feeling didactic or preachy in the storytelling. So that's just a wonderful testament to your great writing and storytelling and vision making on the page.
Yeah, I pour libation to my grandfather, who was a Baptist minister, and he would get up every Sunday. Saturday, I would sit while he was writing his sermons, and every sermon had a lesson. Every single sermon, there was a lesson. But he would get up and tell the wildest stories, all this stuff. And by the time you got to the lesson, you were completely hooked. Or you didn't even know that was the lesson. Like it was just in the story.
He entertained so well.
Oh my God. And there was usually music too. So, but he was a performer. So the whole thing was like, whoa, yeah. And I really feel that that we respond to story. And I love numbers. I was a math major. Math physics major. So I love numbers, but and for me, numbers are stories. So I realized, wow, for you, numbers are stories. So how about help the people out, help them see the stories that the numbers are. And because that's something my grandfather would try to do. Like, let us embody whatever this thing is that I'm trying to say. And then people can relate to it and come to their own understanding. Without him having to tell them, y'all shouldn't be doing that. Everybody in the audience would be like, yeah, we shouldn't be doing that. But he hadn't said that.
Their own.
Yeah, they would come to it. So
they arrive there on their own.
Yeah.
We have two questions from the audience, from Megan. You spoke earlier about using screenplay style writing as an outline for your novels.
Yeah.
Do any of those screenplay descriptions make it directly into your book?
Oh, yeah.
Editing, revising that happens to them first?
No. Now, let me just say the screenwriter is much better than the novelist. So the novelist must rewrite a lot. But stuff from the screenplay, like some of the descriptions that I just gave you of the landscape, those are straight from screenplay. Like, how am I going to evoke this world? Because, like, what am I seeing? Oh, what's the image? And I just describe the image.
Like the cathedral trees. And everything.
Yeah, the cathedral trees. Because I think Sheree was asking me while I was writing this book, what do those look like? And I just did the movie. Okay, let's show the screen. Oh, and then I just wrote it down. So that stuff ends up actually right in it. Greg Baird told me, you don't have a scene designer. So, you got to do the scene design, right? And the costumes, that was Greg. I was like, oh, Greg, really? Yes, you must do this. So, and I realized that, when I write stage directions, or screen, you got to like evoke it. And I'm like, oh, I can do that. But I just have to keep going. I don't get the designer coming in and adding to it, because what you do, you describe something like that I evoke, and then the designer would make this amazing thing from it. So I try to go further. I try to go look at images that a designer would look at once I have the first thing, and then I can flesh it out. I can feel myself in the space, and I can add that. And that's the novelist like working hard. The screenwriter like, yeah, okay, like fill it in. So and
the screenplay, the actors fill it in. The actors and all the production and the sound design and all that.
So I gotta do all. Yeah.
But not that you got to put it all on the page for us, pretty much.
Yep.
Got another question for you from Andrew. Did you spend a lot of time observing nature to write such evocative images?
I'm a nature freak. So
Yeah.
I've spent my whole life. I love bees. If you didn't get that, I love bees. And I've been interested in the social insects since I was about 5 or 6. And my mother decided that my brother and I, we were like making poison to kill the ants. And my mother said, oh, how about an ant farm? Instead of killing the ants with this, like we had like some menthol X that we were using to try to kill the ants. And she said, I think it'd be very interesting if you had an ant farm. So she got me an ant farm. And I never tried to kill another ant. I was so fascinated by them. And then I started getting books on them and watching them and understanding them. Bees, when they're alarmed, smell like bananas. So when you say the science, it's, I don't make up a lot of the details like that. I could go on and on and on about bees and beekeepers and, different kinds of bees and stuff. So, and then for the book, I would just go read when I'm like, okay, what's somebody else saying about bees? So I could go read that with a baseline knowledge. So there are many creatures in the book. And I'm a bicyclist. So one of the things I do is I go for a couple hour bike rides into the woods. So I spend a lot of time in the woods. And whenever I go anywhere, I travel and I take a walk. I've been in the Alps. In Hawaii, we saw the cathedral trees. Oh, they were amazing. Or out in California, the redwoods. So I've seen the trees and I've felt them and I have heard them. And so, wherever I go, I have to go and check out what are the trees doing here? And what's the water doing? What's the river saying? So that was Bill Orem made me write Floating City. He was like, okay, you doing nature. Well, what's going on in Floating City? You got to get us there. So I had to go, okay, you can do that too. It's not just the trees and the rivers and stuff, but being able to understand, physical reality from my own experiences allows me to like do the screenwriting thing of like, what's the set? So I did the set for Floating City in contrast to the natural world and in relation to it. So I hope that, excuse me.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you. And I know you bike all over the place.
I do.
So yes.
I'm
And then we're going to have to say goodnight.
Okay.
From Giselle. What are 3 movies or books you recommend that everyone must see and read in this lifetime?
3? Only 3? Oh, okay. So Daughters of the Dust.
Yeah.
Julie Dash, Daughters of the Dust. 9 Bar Blues by Sheree Renée Thomas. So if you want, to transform your being, definitely read 9 Bar Blues. That's the current thing. And then Momo by Michael Ende, which is, like I was just talking about this earlier, but, those 3 things have deeply influenced me. Sheree, Michael Ende, and Julie Dash. Woo! So you must.
Never-ending story, and you translated his work.
I translated his plays to English, and we did a production here at Smith. And I met him; he was wonderful. But Alice Childress went to East Germany and felt like she was, like, wow, I understand these people. And I remember having a conversation with her, and this is right before I decide to learn German. And she was like, you really love Germany and Germans. And I was like, really? And I thought, why would I do that? But then, Alice being Alice, I ended up studying German in my 30s and going there and translating and everything. So Julie Dash, Daughters of the Dust, The Brother from Another Planet, John Sayles, Momo, and 9 Bar Blues. Get that right now. It's out there. It's really good. And it's nominated for all sorts of wonderful things, which we hope you win. And it is a treat. My favorite story is Madam in the Map, but all of the stories, there's
the hardest one for me to write. But
I know, but it was all worth it. It was all worth it.
That story, I didn't want to be in Nathan Beverford's headspace, but I had to. Yeah,
you had to. You took us there. You you shook us up. You shook us up. So it's 9 Bar Blues, and the whole thing for me about the 9-bar blues, because 9 is not the number of bars we usually have, and that's exactly what this book does. It says, really, let's just like rearrange your mind. And so it's a ride. Each story is its own amazing jewel, that, like, sort of refracts the world in a different way for us. So yeah.
That's high praise from you, Andrea Hairston, author of so many wonderful novels that are all going to be reissued.
Yes.
From Tor.
Yes. Yes.
Macmillan, excuse me, books, amazing. And we have been talking about her latest new novel, now available in all of the great bookstores everywhere.
Yay!
Poisons.
Yes. Paperback tonight drops. So order it. Yes.
Get it now. You will not regret this story. Just
Yes.
so wonderful and inspiring. You're one of the few people I can think of that writes hard truths, but leaves us feeling inspired and more possible.
Right.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much. This was amazing. It was such an interesting conversation, and I really appreciate it. I know all the bookstores really, really appreciate y'all being with us tonight. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Definitely go and buy both of these books, Master of Poisons in paperback and 9-Bar Blues. They're both out now. On the main Crowdcast page for this event, you can go back to that, and all of the bookstores are there with links to the website. So pick your bookstore and buy from there, hopefully. If you're watching this, please. We do have, I didn't mention this earlier, but we do have, all of the bookstores have signed book plates from Andrea, and we also have really cool like Maplewood bookmarks for both of this, for Master Poisons and for the new book, which is really cool. Both are on the special exclusive bookmark we got from Tor.
Redwood and Wildfire, which comes out in February.
Okay, great. So yes, we have Redwood and Wildfire and Master of Poisons on the bookmark. So you can get a cool bookmark and a signed book plate if you order from one of the 6 bookstores on that main Crowdcast page. So go ahead and do that. And thank you all so much again. And thank you to Tor.com. I appreciate everything and everyone. And y'all have a very good evening. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye, Andrea.
Bye.
Bye, Candace.
Bye. Have a good night, y'all.
Yeah.